Welcome into Off the Bench here on a Monday. What a glorious Monday it is here in Southwest Ohio. Just look at the box scores that you've seen recently from all of our local teams. Our UC Bearcats lost by 1,000,000 in Utah. Our FCC Fighting Lions lost 4-0 against their rival. And, of course, our beloved, our faithful Cincinnati Bengals, in a week that we thought couldn't hurt us anymore, and we're right back here as they gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Chicago Bears and lost on a 56-yard touchdown with 30 seconds left to play. Reed Mouse, Stone Shields here on Off the Bench. I'm ready to rock. I'm firing at the hip this entire hour. Stone, how are you on this glorious Monday?
Hey, we're here, right? We still get to sit here and talk about it, which is great, but it seems almost impossible how bad this defense is. It seems almost impossible.
Impossible. Yeah, that's a good way to start. And when I say I'm firing at the hip, I'm firing at the hip for an hour. So if you want to get out a pen and paper and just track where my thoughts go for the next 60 minutes, you might have a fun diagram at the end of this. But we'll start with this. It seems impossible the way this defense has played the last few weeks. And coming into this year, we said last year the Bengals had a historically bad defense, and they did. Had a historically bad defense. We just need this defense to be mediocre. They just need to be a little better, and we'll be good. And all those things hold true. But when I think of this defense, and while they are still historically bad, while they are still otherworldly bad, Pee-wee, elementary, junior, whatever you want to call it, Pop Warner, bad, I have trouble calling them historically bad because what they are, when I watch this team, the emotions that they elicit are laughter because they're hilariously bad. I watch this defense and I can do nothing but just ponder how a team can call themselves a professional franchise with a defense that bad. How do you pull off the luckiest 2 minutes and return an onside kick? Chase Brown just barely touches Tremaine Edwards to keep him down and prevent a pick six. Like, everything was going in our way. We give up a 56-yard touchdown to Colston Loveland where we had 4 guys up the middle too. Just a post up the middle streak. 4 guys around him and we can't make this. It is hilarious. 580 yards. In the past 2 weeks against the New York Jets, who are the worst offense in football. And this week against the Chicago Bears, who had their third-string running back. They gave up over 500 combined rushing yards. It doesn't make any sense. And the point of this all is this team, the Cincinnati Bengals, what we've now watched is they have lost 6 of 7, have given up 27-plus points in 8 straight games, and have completely sleptwalked defensively the last 2 games against the New York Jets and the Chicago Bears, losing in hilarious fashion and been embarrassed through the 9 games they've played this year. They've been embarrassed in all 6 losses. What we are seeing, and I'm sorry that I don't have a thesaurus open to come up with a better word, because my lexicon cannot accurately describe what I'm watching. But what we are seeing is an unserious franchise, is an unserious football team, is an unserious defense. This team, who just 2 years ago were at the top of betting lines to not just win a game on any given week, to not just win their division, But to win the most competitive league in the world of sports, to win the Super Bowl, this team just 3 years ago was near the top, vying for one of the biggest, beating one of the most dominant dynasties we've ever seen in the Kansas City Chiefs, and beating one of the most dynamic quarterbacks we've ever seen, Josh Allen, seemingly every time we play them. That was just a few years ago. And now this team is a laughing stock. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I can't even wrap my brain around it. How bad this defense can be and how poor this franchise, how many mistakes that they've made with first-round draft picks, with free agent signings, with coaching staff changes, all of it. I cannot comprehend how we've gotten to this point. To where just a few years ago, people were talking about us being the biggest rival to one of the biggest dynasties this sport has ever seen. And now we couldn't beat Justin Fields and the New York Jets at home. And we give up a touchdown, a 60-yard touchdown with 30 seconds to play to lose to the Chicago Bears. Also, two franchises the last 2 weeks that we played, not exactly world beaters. They are constantly at the bottom of the totem pole in this NFL. And they look like well-run organizations compared to us. And that's where it brings me to this point. I have held off. I've been the bannerman for people on Chatterbox's streams, for voices on the Bengals content of this whole company, saying when everyone's like, we got to fire Zach Taylor, I'm like, wait a minute. We're talking about the guy that's won 5 playoff games for a franchise that had 5 playoff wins before he took the job. We're talking about the guy that beat Andy Reid. Talking about the guy that went to a Super Bowl and an AFC championship in back-to-back years. Are we sure we want to fire this guy? He's had success, and knowing the way that this Bengals team operates, are we sure it's going to get better? I've been that guy. I've been that person that has sat here and defended Zach Taylor. Because to his credit, he's the offensive mind. He's the offensive play caller. In this offense, it's unbelievable. Sure, it takes about a month to get the wheels turning every single year. But come October, this offense is as good as any team in the league, regardless of who's at quarterback. We saw it with Jake Browning in 2023. We're seeing it with Joe Flacco, and of course we're seeing it with our otherworldly quarterback, Joe Burrow, when he's healthy. This offense fires on all cylinders, and that's what Zach's known for. And that's why I've always defended him. I'm not in the business of getting rid of the best coach in a locker room. And Zach Taylor might be the best coach in this locker room. Think about that for a second. He might be the best coach in the Bengals locker room. So that's where I was defending him and like, hey, are we sure we want to do this? But you cannot be taken seriously in this league when you've been embarrassed in 6 consecutive losses, 6 of the last 7 weeks, and hope. And it wasn't like this is a new thing. Like he was already, his seat was warm coming into this season. You cannot hope to keep your job when your team, you're the head coach, you're not just the offensive coordinator. When your team looks consistently inept now for 2 years on one side of the football, you cannot expect to keep your job. You cannot expect to have your job coming next year. And to be honest, it's time now. Cut ties now. Because every team that would be taken seriously in this league would fire him this morning. They'd fire him this morning. And this is, I know that the best teams in this league, they have patience. They let things kind of play out. You try not to be overly emotional, which is what I'm being right now. You try not to do that. This is why teams like the New York Jets are constantly spinning their tires in the mud. This is why teams like the New York Giants are spinning their tires in the mud. It's why the Chicago Bears have constantly spun their tires in the mud. But there's not a single team, from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Green Bay Packers to the San Francisco 49ers to the Kansas City Chiefs and everywhere in between, that at one time would be considered a premier franchise in this league. Not a single one of them would watch what this team has done now for 7 weeks, where they get embarrassed by the Minnesota Vikings, by the Denver Broncos, by the Green Bay Packers, by the Detroit Lions, by the New York Jets, and by the Chicago Bears, and not make serious, franchise-altering moves. And I'll get Stone's opinion on this for a second, but before I do, I want to say this, and I get fired up about this. There's a sentiment amongst people in media that do this job, that do podcasting or whatever, like, I never want to call for someone's job, as I just did right there, to where Zach Taylor's got to lose his job, because that's what serious franchise do. I don't want to call for someone's job. Miss me with that. These guys are millionaires. Zach Taylor has probably enough money invested to where he can never work again, and he can just take some money out from that investment account every single year and live pretty comfortably. We're not talking about guys working down at Armco or guys working at Fisher Body that are losing their jobs, and their families all of a sudden going to be on government funding and everything like that. Like, so miss me with that. That's just a little side tangent. I don't have any remorse calling for Zach Taylor's job, because the point blank is, when you get into this profession, when you get into this team, when you become the head coach, you get the acclaim, you get the praise. When you make the Super Bowl, when your team looks great, you get all of that, and you get the big paychecks to go along with it. But on the other end, when your team looks completely inept and lose 2 embarrassing games at home and 6 of 7 games in a row, you lose your job, because that's the way this world works. That's the way. There's too much money in this sport. There's too much to be lost here for you to do anything else. Stone, you, like me, have been a long defender of Zach Taylor. And I've said this. I've defended him because it feels like this offense, give it a month, it's firing on all cylinders, as it is right now, and he's the offensive play caller. What's your opinion on getting rid of Zach at this very moment?
I agree with a lot of what you said. I think every team in the National Football League, apart from the Cincinnati Bengals, probably makes that move here going into the bye. Just considering, I mean, you had the embarrassments early on with Browning. You always have the slow starts, even with Joe Burrow, and then these back-to-back losses against teams, by the way, that aren't good. We know how bad the Jets are, but the Bears, they're not good, right? And you allow them to score almost 50 points on you at home, 47 points. So basically every other team in the National Football League probably would make that move. I will be shocked, completely shocked, if we get the notification here today or tomorrow that the Bengals are going to do that. I don't think that they will. Okay. They let Marvin Lewis stay for however long he stayed, and there was definitely lots of incompetence floated around during that era of Cincinnati Bengals football. And then the question becomes, what would I do here at this point? I mean, it's tough when you make the decision that you made in the offseason and said, you know what, for the foreseeable future, we're building around Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and then you don't even get through 1 year of that, and then you fire the head coach. That's tough. And to sit here and judge him without Joe Burrow, look, he's got a lot of pieces there on his team, a lot of competent pieces, but they all happen to be on the offensive side of the football, and the offense is unstoppable right now with their third quarterback and Joe Flacco. I mean, this offense past couple weeks is flat out unstoppable, and even in the Pittsburgh game, and you saw it in the second half against Green Bay, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But at the end of the day, he's not the offense coordinator. He's not the pass game coordinator. He's not the quarterback coach. He's the head coach of this football team. And defensively, it just doesn't even – it's not even close. Like, it's not even – it doesn't look like a professional product. We've seen bad defenses throughout the course of the NFL. Throughout the course of my life watching the NFL, you've seen really bad defenses. But this doesn't even look like a bad NFL defense. It looks like a college – like, it doesn't even look like a professional defense. You got guys that aren't athletic. They're slow. All right, they're constantly getting bullied. They can't make tackles. And then you're in games the past couple of weeks where you can't create a turnover. You don't have any chance at getting the football back. So, my stance on that is I wouldn't be I'm not going to, raise heck if they fire him and say that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. I think it would be a borderline scapegoat situation if they did it. But he deserves a lot of blame for what's going on. I would hold on to him the rest of the year, personally, and see what you get the rest of the way, see if he can keep this team together. And if so, you give another opportunity with Joe Burrow back. But obviously, I would be an idiot to come here and sit here and say that would be absolutely crazy, to fire him here at this point, because many other organizations would make that decision. Again, I've protected him and backed him up for a long time. He's a great guy. I think he's done great things offensively for this team. He's fought a lot of adversity. He's overcome it. Been to a Super Bowl, been to AFC Championship. He's had a lot of success. If they make the decision, I personally wouldn't make the decision to fire him, but I can't sit here and complain if they did, because things need to change. One thing that would really drive me crazy, and I'll pass this back to you real quickly here in a second, is that if they were to fire him and then keep Duke, that can't happen. That absolutely cannot be something that happens for this team. You want to fire Zach? Fine. You better fire Duke too, because if you fire Zach and you keep Duke Tobin, what the heck is that going to change? Nothing at all.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And as you see right about here, it says fire them all, because that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at is Zach Taylor. I want him gone. I want Duke Tobin gone. And to be honest with you, I want to start moving. The trade deadline's tomorrow. I want to start moving all these pieces, and I'll get to that later on. But, man, you are in favor of if even not only you want him, you'd give him another year because Joe's not here.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of, assembling this was that Joe was going to be your guy, and that was going to be the identity of your team going forward. And the fact that he's been able to do what he's been able to do offensively without him, I mean, it's fair. It's impressive. It's very, very impressive. But at the end of the day, he's the head coach, and defense is not even close.
No, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And this offense, which he oversees, is as good as the Bengals have ever had, regardless of who the quarterback is. And we know we've got one banged up right now that might come back at the end of the year that is one of the 4 greatest quarterbacks in the league currently. Like, we know all this to be true. But you're not just the offensive coordinator. You're not just the head. You're not just overseeing the offense. You're overseeing this entire team. And the one thing that we've always given you credit for, 2 things. We've always given you credit for the offense, and we've always given you credit for your ability to have a cohesive unit, a chemistry. That's what we said. This team's got great chemistry. This team seems to just play well together. The lack of penalties, all those things that typically come from decent coaching, we saw it crumble yesterday, and it's going to continue to crumble. Just terrible penalties, mistakes, and then the reports from the locker room afterwards, to where the one thing that kind of was your saving grace, Zach, was that you kept this locker room together. Well, now it seems like that thing's crumbling at the pieces, crumbling at the seams. And I can't blame them. These are professional athletes that are wasting their time. There's only a finite number of years in which these players can play professional football. I don't know what the average stay for a starter in the NFL is, probably 4 years. But one of them is getting wasted right here. And they thought they had a good shot because Joe Burrow's their quarterback. He gets hurt. And they thought they still had a good shot because Jamar Chase and maybe Joe Burrow, and it's still getting wasted. It's crumbling because of a completely inept side of the football. And it's not just Zach, as you mentioned. Duke Tobin needs to go, because those 2 guys are clearly the biggest decision makers when it comes to the most important roster construction part of the season, which is the NFL draft. Comes every August, early May, and it is the one piece, especially for a cheap franchise like the Cincinnati Bengals, where you're on an even playing field. If you can scout up and get a little lucky on players falling your way, you can create a monster if you hit in the draft. And it's pretty clear that they are completely tone deaf to the defensive side of the pigskin. To where you want to talk about laughing, you want to talk about hilarious comedy. I mean, we see HBO and all these streaming services spending millions of dollars trying to create the next comedy show or next comedy movie. Hey, you want to make it big in comedy? Go on down to the mothership in Austin, Texas, roll in a VCR and a TV, and just show clips of Shamar Stewart playing football. Dude's getting bounced all over the field. We got laughed at when we took him in April because, he had like 4 sacks in college. Yeah, he has 2 tackles now in his young career. But it is hilarious. It is unserious the way that he plays. And Miles Murphy, the other first-round pick that we took 2 years ago, he's a nothing burger too. They are tone deaf when it comes to drafting defensive pieces, and it falls on the 2 guys with the most sway in that decision-making room, Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin. The simple fact of the matter is, you get a window when you get a young, great quarterback before he gets paid, and they were nails there. They were nails. They hit on some great free agent signings, some reclamation pieces, guys like Eli Apple. Trey Hendrickson comes in, Von Bell, and they drafted some decent pieces. Guys like Logan Wilson, Cam Taylor-Britt played well for a while, but when that window is done and you got to pay your quarterback because you got to, what else are you going to do? You're going to let Joe Burrow go to the free agency? No one blames him. You got to do this. Now you got to start putting the draft capital to the defensive side of the football. And pick after pick after pick, they don't get scratch of the surface guys. They get bums. They get dudes that when other franchises hear the name with the whatever pick, the Cincinnati Bengals select Shamar Stewart, they're probably laughing because they watched the tape. They scouted that guy. And we're taking projects and we need guys that need to fill in right now? That doesn't make sense. The process doesn't even make sense. To where you get this uber talented guy that's going to take some years to fill out, but he needs to play now. The point is, as we look at a 3-6 record and being embarrassed in 6 of our last 7 games, this team is going nowhere, and they're going nowhere fast. And there's 3 things to blame for why this team's going nowhere fast. And the top of them are the head coach, the head of player personnel, and the health of the quarterback. One of those things you can't change because Joe Burrow's health is what it is. You hope he can play year in and year out, but that often isn't the case. The 2 other things you can change. And point blank, Zach Taylor cannot be here anymore. Point blank, Duke Tobin, you've had 26 years to run in your position. You cannot be here anymore. And there's no doubt about it, that there is risk involved with this. That things could get worse. That whoever we bring in, and maybe Zach Taylor is a really good offensive piece and all this, or great offensive mind. It's not as flashy as Ben Johnson. We're running trick plays all over the place, but we score a lot of points and we move the ball at ease. Then all of a sudden the new guy comes in, we get a defensive guy, and he hires an offensive coordinator, and it just doesn't look right in this offense. There's risk involved. But where we're headed is nowhere. Another risk that you can run in is, and tell me if this doesn't sound like the Cincinnati Bengals. We fire Zach Taylor today. We get rid of him today. They make all these moves. They get rid of some pieces, some expiring contracts, Trey Hendrickson, Logan Wilson, even guys like Noah Fant. And we've got this really tough stretch of the Ravens twice, the Bills, the Steelers on the road. And Darren Simmons would likely be our interim head coach. And they rattle off 4 wins with Darren Simmons. And all of a sudden, the Bengals, there's a really loud contingent. Just hire Darren Simmons. What a joke that would be. When has an interim coach ever succeeded? We've seen this time and time again where this interim coach comes in and he wins a few games just because it's a different voice in the locker room. That would be the most Bengals thing ever. We fire Zach Taylor, which is what I want, which is what I'm calling for right now. We get Darren Simmons, and then things start looking better. We look more competitive. We look like a hard-nosed team for once. And then we just go with Darren Simmons. We don't make a serious hire. It is hard. I feel like You ever see one of those graphics to show you how small the world is, and they zoom out, they take you, and they zoom out, and they show you the city, and they zoom out, and they show you the country, they zoom out, and show you the world, and they just show you how big the universe is, and you can't fathom it. Your brain can't wrap the concept of how small we really are in this world. I cannot wrap my brain around what I've watched the last 2 weeks. We do a live watch along, my brain goes to mush watching 5 hours of this Cincinnati Bengals team. And I was okay with it. I was, when we were down 2 touchdowns, whatever. Whatever. I'm cool. I really didn't think they were going to win this game anyways. And you get right back in it. And then we score the touchdown and give them enough time. Give them a minute to play. Minute, whatever it was. And I'm just going they only need 30 yards. They're probably going to kick a field goal. My brain and my heart and everything that I was giving this Cincinnati Bengals team was ready for them to lose on a field goal, and I was okay with it even. And even then, they subdue my expectations once again. And somehow, some way, this Cincinnati Bengals franchise will do exactly what I'm calling for right now, which is hire Zach Taylor, hire Duke Tobin, and it'll somehow get worse because they'll subdue my expectations in a way so unfathomable. They'll go hire the defensive coordinator from Hiram College, D3 in the NCAC or something crazy like that. The same way that we hired Zach Taylor, who no one heard of. He was the QB coach, and he hung out with Sean McVay. Oh, he had one job where he called plays before this. Where was it? In Cincinnati. How'd it go? Terrible. I'm fired up and I'm coming down, Stone. But it just, I'm struggling to find how anything productive comes out of this season without trading it all away, without firing everyone, and starting anew. Because you're already ahead of the curve because you've got the franchise quarterback. You've got that piece. Please help me find some sense in where we go from here.
It's tough, right? Because we talked about off the air. If you're in a situation where you're trying to build an NFL team, you can't build through free agency. You have to draft and develop, right? You can add 1 or 2 pieces to either side of the football in free agency, and maybe that can help get you over the top. But if the foundation is not there with the guys that you drafted, you're just going to be cooked. And unfortunately, you look around this Bengals defense, and there's misses everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. DJ Turner had another great game. Nobody's talking about it, obviously, because they still gave up 50 points to the Chicago Bears. But I just don't understand, or I can't wrap my head around the fact that this could potentially get better soon. Because, you're going to have to hit on draft picks. So that means you're going to have more rookies out there playing next year. And it just gets more difficult each and every year to be able to do that. Now, I think Trey Hendrickson, as we approach the trade deadline here, I do think changes need to be made. We'll see ultimately, if they make any firings as it relates to Duke Tobin or Zach Taylor, or maybe even Al Golden. But I think at this point here, you got to go get a pick for Trey Hendrickson. You have to go get a pick
Correct.
for him. I could sit here and make the argument, by the way, that you still win both those games if Trey Hendrickson was playing, despite the incompetence that you have on the defensive side of the football, just because he's literally here to be a closer, and you had leads in the fourth quarter against the Jets, and you had it with 51 seconds left yesterday against the Bears. I kind of think that if Hendrickson's out there, he finds a way to end the game, and you win those 2 games, and we're having a whole different conversation. But we all know Trey Hendrickson's not going to be here next year. The Philadelphia Eagles, they just traded for Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins, got a 3rd-round pick in the process. Maybe that leads me to believe you could potentially get a 2nd-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. You definitely could get a 3rd, and you need picks. You need to start stockpiling some picks, and Trey Hendrickson can get you a pick or 2. So I think at this point, that's what I'm looking for. Move Trey Hendrickson. Stinks, right? If he's out there, I think you win both these games, but you got to go get a pick for him because you got to hit on. We said it going into the 25 draft, and we're going to be saying it next year. You got to find ways to hit on draft picks, and if you just have the same guys making the same decisions, what makes you feel good about that being the case?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. You mentioned something there, and we talked about this before the show started, where you were like, if Trey Hendrickson plays, do you win those last 2 games? And maybe. Yeah. You can even say probably, but this is what I'm not in the business of doing because I've done it now for 3 years. I'm done giving excuses for why this didn't happen or this didn't happen. 2 years ago, we were looking at in 2023 where we're 9-8 and don't make the postseason. Well, Joe was hurt for the first 4 games. Then he was hurt for the last couple games. And we played the hardest schedule in league history. Okay, good excuses. I'm cool with it. Last year, Joe played great. They're 9-8 again, and they just had a historically bad defense. Okay, great excuses. Here we are, third year, and I'm done with any excuse where like, yeah, if Trey Hendrickson plays, we probably win those last 2 games, and if Joe Burrow is healthy, we probably have 2 more wins, and we're looking at instead of 3-6, we're looking at 5-4 or something along those facts. And the thing is before the season started, we extended or didn't extend, but we gave Trey Hendrickson a pay raise. He sat out all offseason. We gave him a pay raise. And I held the point that you don't need to do that because he's going to be missing game checks. You don't need to give him a pay raise just to get him on the field for practice. What did we give him, an extra $14 million? Well, now we signed up for a $30 million edge rusher who's played 7 games, has 11 tackles, and 4 sacks. They're 9 games when the defense looks hilariously bad. And I'll keep calling it hilariously bad because I'm tired of calling it historically bad. And it is hilariously bad. And now we've got to, rightfully so, get rid of him by tomorrow. And the reason that I want to trade Trey, I want to trade Logan Wilson, I want to trade Cam Taylor-Britt. McKinley Jackson asking for a trade even though we just drafted him, last year? Sure. Get out of here. Trade guys on the offensive side. Trade guys like Noah Fant. Mike Gesicki's hurt for the year, so you can't get rid of him. Trade any piece that can bring back a draft pick, because what I want this house cleaned. And if I want Zach Taylor gone, and I want Trey Hendrickson gone, and I want Duke Tobin gone, and I want, even Al Golden gone, even though he's been the DC for 9 weeks, and it's pretty clear that these players aren't competitive. If I want him gone, I want to set up the next coach and the next head of GM, player personnel, whatever job you want to call, whatever we're going to replace Duke Tobin with. I want them to be set up as well as possible for the coming years. Because Joe Burrow isn't getting younger. Jamar Chase isn't getting younger. T. Higgins isn't getting younger. This AFC is looking worse by the week. And for the first time, the AFC in the Joe Burrow era looks to be the less competitive conference, to where the Chiefs aren't world beaters, the Bills aren't world beaters. The Ravens have some cracks. They're still really good teams, but this AFC is open, and maybe for the coming years, to where I want to set up the next guys as well as possible. And maybe the most depressing fact of this all, other than the fact that we just gave up 580 yards to a quarterback that I have been on record saying I think will be good, and I still think he'll be good because Caleb Williams clearly has the horsepower. He just doesn't look right now. Looks happy feet, but I'm getting sidetracked. The most depressing part of this all, when I look at this team, is I know that there's no easy fix. That I know that there is no, we just get a linebacker in there. We just get another DC in there. We just got to hit on one draft pick. This defense is so far away that it's going to take multiple drafts. It's going to take multiple free agency periods before this team is competent again, before this defense is competent again. And the naysayers of the Bengals the fans will go, well, you got rid of Lou Anarumo. I mean, what were they supposed to do? That's a fine move based off the way the team played last year. Yeah. He looks like he's still the best, one of the better DCs in football. But if you're going to ride with Zach Taylor for another year, then you got to make some change, and the defense wasn't it last year. It's the same thing I just said earlier about Zach Taylor. When you are the head of a team, when you're the head of a side of the football, the DC, and the DC is historically bad as it was last year. Not hilariously bad, There's a big difference there. Not hilariously bad like it is under Al Golden. Then you need to lose your job. But I look at this team, and I know that you could get another, even the most rose-tinted depiction of what can happen going forward, to where we get a second-round pick for Trey Hendrickson, and we get a fourth for Logan Wilson, and a fourth or a fifth for Cam Taylor, which isn't happening, but let's just live in the fairy tale land. Let's live in Narnia and pretend like it is. Let's go through that wardrobe and pretend like Aslan's going to come over that hillside and save us. Even with all that, they've got to hit on so many players. They've got to have so many productive players join this defensive side. And oh yeah, we're going to have to start and learn the game in real time. That it's going to take years to get back to the level that the Bengals defense played in 2021 and 2022, which, by the way, go look it up, wasn't great. I think 2022, they were like the 9th best defense in the league. And in 2021, when the Super Bowl was like the 17th. So it wasn't like we were the 85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens or even any of the really good defenses in the league this year. It was still okay to good. We are so far away. And the solutions are not simple. But when the solutions aren't simple, the measures have to be drastic. And the guy that matched the franchise total in playoff wins needs to go. Zach Taylor, you seem like a tremendous human being. You truly do. And I've defended you for 3 years. But I cannot continuously watch a franchise that I love get embarrassed week in and week out and still say that you deserve this job. I cannot watch that happen. Duke Tobin, don't know you. I know you belong to the same country club that my brother does, and you play golf with my brother, and my brother speaks very highly of you. But it's pretty simple. That you've had this job for 26 years, and you cannot fail multiple eras of this franchise. You cannot I don't even remember who the coach was before Marvin Lewis at the top of my head. That's how flustered I am. But you cannot fail the entire Marvin Lewis era. You cannot fail this Zach Taylor era and continue to keep your job. The drafting on this team is terrible. And when you are a cheap franchise, you got to hit on the drafts. And the two guys that make those decisions probably, I mean, without being in the room, I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that it's probably the head coach and the player of personnel, Duke Tobin. When you have failed in the draft, as you've done the last few years, you cannot keep your job. Listen, I have a lot of different facets of what I do here at Chatterbox Sports. One of them being work all these events. If I F up 9 straight events, guess what? I don't get a job anymore. I don't get to keep collecting paychecks. I don't get to keep going to these events or keep making decisions as the same way that Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin do. You just don't. All right, so you, Stone, you have said that, hey, maybe you'd like to run it back with Zach. You're probably in favor. Although I think that if I'm getting your take accurate, you would not be surprised or beat up if they do get rid of Zach. Like you're not going to be like, you're not beating the drum and say like Zach Taylor needs to be the coach next year.
Correct.
You're just, if you were making the decisions, you'd probably give him another shot at this just based off the way this offense looks, which is fair.
Yes, that on top of you just paid T and Jamar, clearly the identity of your team going forward is those two guys, and Joe Burrow. Zach Taylor is a big part of that there as well. So I just think you got to capitalize here within the next 3 or 4 years. And I think there's a chance that if you can correct some things on defense, you could maybe be competitive next year. But I feel like if you fire the head coach, I feel like next year is kind of a wash, and you can't afford to do that if you're just paying those guys. So that's why I'm on that side of the fence. But I can't sit here and say you absolutely can't fire Zach Taylor. I just can't say that.
Okay, so – you've already said that we need to trade Trey and everything like this.
Yeah.
Are you at least on board that it's going to take a lot of draft capital? It's going to take a lot of good hits in the draft room to get this defense competent. So are you on board with, hey, we need to start getting rid of all these pieces? I know you said Trey, and I know you mentioned a couple other, but are you okay with just tearing down the fabric that is this current veteran roster, sans guys like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and even T. Higgins?
Yeah, well, I mean, defensively, there's not much to trade, right? I mean, Trey Hendrickson, you can get a pick for him. Maybe you can probably get a day 3 pick for Logan Wilson, but beyond that, I don't know. Could you get a 7th round pick for CTB? I don't know, maybe. But yeah, you got to trade off some of those guys. Another veteran, Orlando Brown Jr. We haven't even talked about him. The Bengals offense has been so incredible, despite how bad he is at that left tackle spot, and all of a sudden, when you look at professional football, I think their 3 most important positions besides the head coach are quarterback, edge rusher, and left tackle, and the Bengals have a left tackle issue. That is very, very clear here at this point with OBJ. But, yeah, I think you got to go get a pick for Trey. He's not going to be here next year. You're out of it. It sucks to say, and you don't want to say you're technically out until you're eliminated. But how, watching this defense, can you – I mean, look at your schedule. You got to play Baltimore twice, Pittsburgh, New England, Buffalo, you're not going to give up less than 30 points in any of those games, I don't think, right? I mean,
will they give up less than 30 points in any game for the rest of the year?
Right. So it's it stinks to say that as we're only just now getting into November, but the season's over. Keeping Trey Hendrickson, it might win a game or two here down the stretch, but that doesn't do anything for you going forward. And I'm not one of those guys that wants to tank for a better pick, but that'll just get in the way if you keep Trey Hendrickson, because you'll get a little bit worse of a pick if you have Trey Hendrickson than if you don't. So the whole reason to have Trey was that he could be that closer late in the year when you got Burrow and Chase and Higgins down and up on offense, but that we don't really need that service anymore here at this point with the 3-6 record.
Yeah, the tides of where my fandom are have shifted. The tides of what I want from the rest of this season have completely shifted to where I said earlier in this show that you cannot be considered a competent franchise, and I truly mean this, if you do not make a franchise-altering move in the next 48 hours or before the trade deadline. If we stand pat and have Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin, and Trey Hendrickson on this team, the coaching staff, and roster come 5 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, then I will say this to everyone watching this show that is a Bengals fan. For everyone listening to this show that is a Bengals fan. For everyone that if this gets clipped up, sees this clip on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, wherever. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing ruining our Sundays watching this team? If they don't make a serious franchise-altering move, then what are we doing? The cliche of the same thing over and over again is insanity. Yeah, I feel insane watching this team. They're pulling it out of me, man. You know how easy it is for me to just be positive? That's what I do for most of my life. I'm positive about almost everything. But I cannot look at this team and find 1 ounce of positivity. So where the tides are shifting with my fandom to where I was hoping to backdoor into the playoffs and Joe Burrow can get healthy and we can just get a little feisty for the postseason. That's where I was going into this past week because I promised you guys I'd be all in on the season after we beat the Steelers. The only 2 things I want to happen for the rest of this year, and they're big ask. They are big ask from this team and from the football gods and the powers that be in this National Football League. The 2 things I'm asking are that Zach Taylor isn't my head coach at the end of next season and that we beat the Steelers and sweep the Ravens so that both Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh lose their jobs so that we can take a pick of one of those 2 guys. Because right now there's a lot of options out there, but those guys would be my first 2. And I've said it on the show before, if one of those 2 guys come available, I am tired of getting the quarterbacks coach from guys that had lunch with Sean McVay. I'm tired of those hires. I want to get a man in the locker room, not children, an adult. And the one thing that Zach Taylor, you could always hang your hat on, was that this team wasn't going to make childish mistakes in the penalties and that they were going to have a good culture and stay upbeat. But at some point, we lost it yesterday. We had Orlando Brown Jr. choking the opposing player. And you know what? As embarrassing as that is, at least it's a little bit of fire. Where's that on the defensive side? Why can't we have guys like that on the defensive side? Instead, we've got Shamar Stewart running in the opposite direction and getting thrown around like a rag doll every play. We got Jordan Battle, our safety. It's in the name. Keep it safe. Can't make a tackle on Colston Loveland with the game on the line. It's the identity of this team. I'm not sure what it is anymore. Because it used to be offense and high flying and maybe we'll get a pick or maybe we'll do this and we'll stay together. How the hell are you Zach Taylor and you've been this player-oriented coach? Do you not get in front of a microphone and have any sense of pride at all in who you are as a football coach and who you are as a man and not just get fired up at the way your team is playing? That's what football is. It's an analogy. It's a metaphor. It's hyperbole for war. It's why we like it. It's why the instinct of us as human beings enjoy watching this so much. We enjoy that. Since the Coliseum days of the Gladiators, we enjoy watching these car crashes happen. And this team is just simply too soft. And you cannot play the most violent sport in the world at the highest level in the most competitive league in the world and be soft. You cannot do it anymore. And I cannot do it anymore. And I don't have much hair left on the top of my head. I'm going to pull out every follicle if I have to continue watching and doing a watch along what I've done for the last 2 weeks with what we saw at home against the New York Jets and the Chicago Bears. Every follicle on my head will be ripped out because I cannot watch this. Stone, I saw we had a couple super chats. I don't know if you want to read those live. I haven't curated them. I haven't seen what is said, but fire off those super chats if you got them up.
All right, 1 second here. Let me see. I thought I saw one.
We got one. I've got one.
Well.
It's from Ben Riley.
Okay, yeah.
It's Ben Riley, $10 super chat. Unk is tired. Gave us a career game better than the Super Bowl of 4 touchdowns, 109.4 passer rating, 470 with his arm falling off, and we lose because we don't score 50 mother effing points in an NFL game. Are you kidding me? Ben Riley, thank you for the super chat. You're right. What gets swept under all the madness of what we saw yesterday is that Joe Flacco, who's not a Hall of Famer, but a borderline Hall of Famer, you don't play into your 40s without being a very, very accomplished quarterback. He's won a Super Bowl. And it's the first time he's thrown for 400 yards in his career. Threw for 470 yards with an injury at his brittle age. 470 yards. And it's not good enough. You know what? I trade them all. Trade Joe Flacco. Trade him to the Commanders, who's going to have Jaden Daniels out for a long time. Ha! Well, wouldn't that be awesome? You want to make a big brain play, flip the Joe Flacco trade and just get him, and we'll play Jake Browning, and we'll go 3-14 for the rest of the year and have a top 5 pick. It's the other piece of this is we keep talking about we are wasting Joe Burrow's career, which we are. Part of it's he's always hurt, but we are wasting it in these last 3 years. Jamar Chase, I'm not old enough to watch that. I never saw Anthony Munoz play football. I understand that he is regarded as one of, if not the best offensive linemen that have ever played this sport. When I watch the Cincinnati Bengals, and I have been since about 2001, Jamar Chase has the ability to go down as the greatest Bengal of all time. He is an otherworld talent. And we're not just wasting Joe Burrow. We're wasting his career. Because it's pretty clear, and I think Joe Burrow is one of the top 4 quarterbacks in the world, so don't get this twisted. Don't get this twisted. It's pretty clear that when you got T. Higgins and Jamar Chase running around, and you got a guy that can read a defense, unlike Jake Browning, and you got a guy that can throw the ball, even with a banged-up shoulder with some velocity, unlike Jake Browning, that this team and this offense can fire at a very high level. Maybe the best, certainly top 5 in the league. And the other thing that's crazy about it is we don't even need all the trick plays that Ben Johnson's doing, quadruple reverses and flea flickers and bug flickers and spider flickers and whatever you got up your sleeve, Ben Johnson. We don't need that because we just tell Jamar Chase, go get open, big guy, and he gets open. We tell T. Higgins, hey, we're just going to throw the ball up for you. You go get it, big guy, and he goes and gets it. That's how good this offense is. And still, they put up 42 and 38 points in the last 2 weeks. And it's not good enough. And it's becoming abundantly clear that it'll never be good enough with this defense. I don't know what else to say, Stone. I don't know what else to say. Because this team has about, it's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Trade deadline's 4 p.m. tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And they have, by my approximation, 29 hours to make a franchise-altering move, or I have lost all confidence in this operation at all.
What are you hoping to gain from the rest of this season? I think we're both on the same page that playoffs, you can forget about the playoffs. Right, unfortunately, you can probably forget about Joe Burrow playing another snap this year for the Cincinnati Bengals. But what are you trying to get? Obviously, you're very frustrated. I think a lot of the fan base certainly relates with you as it relates to that. But what are you trying to get out of this year? It seems like you want these changes to happen now, as opposed to the end of the year.
Yep.
What benefit do you think that gives? And I guess just roll through exactly what you're trying to get here.
Okay, so I'll lay out exactly what I want for the rest of the year.
Good.
I'll lay out exactly what I want. I want Zach Taylor gone before the trade deadline today. In fact, I want him gone before I go to bed tonight. When I lay down and turn on the white noise machine as I sleep next to my pregnant wife and my 2 golden retrievers tonight, I want to know that we are getting a new head coach here in Cincinnati. And on top of that, I want to wake up with a push notification saying that Duke Tobin's also gone. So I want those 2 guys gone. And I don't know who's going to be pulling the triggers on these trades, but then I want to trade any piece that's not going to be here next year. The Trey Hendrickson, the Logan Wilsons. I don't know what Noah Fant's contract is, but the Noah Fants, the Cam Taylor Britts, those guys, all gone. And I want to load up the draft and the salary cap with as much space and as many picks as possible. So that when we hire a coach at the end of this year, when we hire a coach who I want it to be an adult, I'm tired of the young guys. There's going to be young names thrown around. I want it to be a defensive mind, and I want it to be an adult. Guys like Mike Vrabel. But I'll settle for one or the other. I don't want to have first-time head coach here. I know Jesse Minter's a hot name going around the D.C. for the Chargers. He went to school here in Cincinnati at Mount St. Joe University. I know there's a bunch of different names. I want an adult in the room because I feel pretty confident, and I want a defensive player because I feel pretty confident in that this offense is going to fire no matter who's calling the shots. And lastly, I want us to play nothing but young guys for the rest of this year. I want Shamar Stewart, Miles Murphy, DJ Turner, Dax, all these young guys that we've drafted over the last few years. And I want them to play as many snaps as possible so that maybe if there is some bone in their body that can play professional football, we can at least see it. They get as many reps as possible so that they're not completely green, so they're not completely wet behind the ears when we need them to play some rotational or some starting snaps next year. And I want to know exactly what we have on the defensive side, because I'm gonna spoil something for you. I already know what we got, and it's nothing on that side. We got DJ Turner and a bunch of bums. Maybe Demetrius Knight can be a starting linebacker in this league. Maybe Barrett Carter could be a starting linebacker, but they're not going to be stars. Maybe Joseph Ossai can be a rotational edge rusher in this league, but he's not a star. Maybe Miles Murphy and Shamar Stewart can do something that resembles a defensive football player or a professional football player instead of whatever the hell is going on when I watch every single Sunday. I wish. That's what I want, by the way. I want as many young players to play as possible. I want as many draft picks so that the next guy can come in and mold a team in his image. I wish that I can say I'm sitting here talking to you all watching this show, talking to Stone, talking to everyone that listens to this. I wish I could sit here and tell you that I'm doing some sort of a bit. I wish that I can tell you that I'm being Stephen A. Smith right now. And I'm doing this WWE style. I'm doing a shoot, or I'm doing a promo. But everything I've said for the last 57 minutes, I believe and I mean. This isn't coming just from the brain. It's coming from the heart. And it's dying. It needs a pacemaker when it comes to this team. They broke me so much yesterday. I was telling Stone this yesterday. Listen to where my emotions were at yesterday. I do this 6-hour watch along, and they break me. Snapped like a twig. And I go home, and I go, all right, I can't watch football today. Sorry, honey, because she was really wanting to watch football. Yeah. I go home, and I'm like, I'm sorry, honey, I cannot watch football. For some reason, I decide, let's watch a movie. What's a movie we went on a date and go see? So we watches 2018, A Star is Born. And I was so emotional from the Bengals game. I'm crying like a baby watching A Star is Born. And then I finish it out. How do I end my day in the world of entertainment where I'm just getting pumped with endorphins and all the stuff, all the TV shows and everything? I finished watching it all, that horror TV show, Welcome to Derry. So now I can't even go to sleep and can't turn the light off because I'm scared. I'm so lost, dude. Guys, thank you so much for being here for the past hour. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk, hopefully, about some major changes that have happened. Stay tuned. Stay locked in for Chatterbox Sports. If there is a big move that happens, whether Zach Taylor being gone, Duke Tobin being gone, they trade a piece, we will be live with Chatterbox Bengals shortly. So stick around for that. The Stone Shield Show is coming up. We'll have a lot to talk about here in Cincinnati sports. It's the first day of college basketball. I know Xavier plays tonight. I don't know if UC plays tonight. I think they do. But we'll see you around tomorrow. Stone Shield Show coming up here. Thanks, guys.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show here on a Monday. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. Plenty to discuss. So we actually are going to spend 60 minutes on today's show talking about Ke'Bryan Hayes winning the Gold Glove. How about that? Some positive news here in Cincinnati. Just kidding. Lots to unpack. As it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals, this defense is impossibly bad. Impossibly. I don't understand how you can go out there and give up 47 points to the Chicago Bears, be totally incompetent on that side of the football for 60 minutes after following up a performance where you were just as incompetent the previous week against the New York Jets. And these aren't great football teams by any stretch of the imagination. We all know how bad the Jets are, but this Bears team, all right, this isn't the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Baltimore Ravens with a healthy Lamar Jackson. These aren't, offenses full of firepower, and they hang almost 40 points on you in the Jets game and then 47 points here in the Bears game. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the defensive side of the football, all the issues that Cincinnati has out there. Also, we do need to spend some time talking about Joe Flacco, because this Bengals defense stole what was going to be an all-time performance by Joe Flacco, and it still really is kind of an all-time performance, but I'm talking about not just as it relates to the history of this franchise. This would be like an all-time NFL moment if 40-year-old Joe Flacco was able to come out on top and win this game with the injury that he had. Zach Taylor saying after the game he could hardly hold his arm up throughout the duration of the week. He didn't even fully go through warm-ups pregame because he was just kind of saving it for the game, and to go out there and throw for as many yards as he did. He never had a game in his NFL career with 400-plus yards. Does it, puts his team in a position where they just need to stop with 51 seconds. Bears only have one timeout, and, of course, unable to do so with his performance. But the performance of the defense, just really hard to wrap your head around. The defense is just absolutely that bad for the Cincinnati Bengals. But we'll talk about Joe Flacco. Also, the trade deadline is tomorrow. In the National Football League, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and I think lots of decisions and questions are going to be asked as it relates to how Cincinnati handles things at the deadline. What do you do? Do you make trades? Do you make firings? All conversations that we will have on this show. I'm someone that has defended Zach Taylor for a really, really long time, but at this point, we'll see what Cincinnati does, but it's kind of hard to defend this as it continues to happen on a week-in, week-out basis, and now kind of a year-in, year-out basis as well. I think he does deserve a lot of credit for what's going on offensively. Was the head coach, not the offensive coordinator, and the defense, it just doesn't even look like a professional defense, which obviously is really, really hard to wrap your head around here at this point. If we have some time for some non-Cincinnati Bengals conversation, we'll do that. Some top teams across the league falling. We'll have our power rankings tomorrow live on the show. Certainly going to be a shakeup at the top. The Buffalo Bills defeat the Kansas City Chiefs in Buffalo. Good game there. The Green Bay Packers somehow lose at home to the Carolina Panthers. The Lions lose to J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. So several upsets there in the NFL. If we have some time, we'll talk about that. And at some point this week, we will talk about the World Series, because what a classic that was, and just absolutely heartbreaking and devastating if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. Losing in Game 7, so many different opportunities to win that game. But as Joe Davis said, if you're going to knock off the champs, you got to knock them out. And unfortunately, the Toronto Blue Jays were not able to do that. So many questionable decisions. IKF on third base. Where's the secondary lead? Why are you sliding? Lots can be criticized, critiqued when it comes to that game. But just Dave Roberts, he pulled all the right triggers, pulled all the right levers in that game, and the Dodgers repeat as world champions in the World Series. But appreciate everybody hanging out. We're live, by the way, every day during the week, 11 to noon, here at Chatterbox Sports, and we follow Off the Bench every single day. Reed Mouse did a tremendous job on Off the Bench here this morning, and he will be back tomorrow. So 10 to 12 every day. Weekdays here at Chatterbox Sports. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Like the stream, all that good stuff. And the podcast will be up later this afternoon, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, you name it, it's there. Plenty of clips out on YouTube there as well. Plenty of stuff on social media. Your one-stop shop for the best Cincinnati sports coverage right here at Chatterbox Sports. Also branching out to lots of other national stories on my show as well. College basketball gets underway tonight, so we'll spend time talking about that throughout the rest of the week. But I want to start with some stats here. Paul Dehner Jr. has these for The Athletic. Paul, of course, tremendous job covering the Cincinnati Bengals. Nobody does it as good as Paul, and he's got some crazy stats that went out in his piece here this morning. The Bengals, of course, gave up 502 total yards and 254 yards rushing to the New York Jets a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, well, that's the Jets. That's the worst team in football, and you gave up those kind of numbers. Is it really going to get worse here against the Bears, who obviously are a much better team than the New York Jets? But can it get worse than 502 total yards and 254 yards rushing when you got a guy that's a former 7th-round pick, young running back, as DeAndre Swift is out? Surely your run game defensively, your run defense is going to be a little bit better than that. Well, how about 576 total yards and 283 yards on the ground to the Chicago Bears? Just staggering stuff. Staggering. And I talked about it at the top of the show. When you watch this defense, it doesn't look like a professional defense. And the whole, people go out there and say, oh, the college comp to an NFL team. Can the best college team beat the top or the worst NFL team? And I've always thought that's a stupid argument to make and a stupid, thing to even sit here and talk about. But honestly, as I sit here and think about this, is Ohio State's defense better than the Bengals' defense? Right? Again, I think that's crazy for people to go out there and say that. I've always thought that's one of the worst takes in sports talk is when you try to compare a top college team to a professional team. But I don't know if you can convince me that this Bengals defense is better than Ohio State's, to be completely honest with you. Like, could this Buckeye defense go up there and give up 45 points instead of 47 and maybe 550 yards instead of 576? I think part of me thinks that actually could be true, which is really, really hard to wrap your head around. Just getting bullied on each and every play, right? They turn around, they hand the ball off, and the defensive line's going backwards, so it's a couple of yards, no problem. They're always falling forward, right? Even when they're able to apply some kind of pressure on the quarterback, they can't get him on the ground. You got guys running free in your secondary all game long, and you got guys on the back end of your defense that are just soft and can't make tackles. And, of course, I'm talking about Jordan Battle and Geno Stone. Over the last 5 games, the Bengals have allowed 117 points in the second halves of games. The next worst team in that span is the New York Giants. Guess how many points they've given up in second halves over the past 5 games? 77. That's the second worst. The worst is the Bengals at 117. That's a pretty wide margin there. A pretty wide margin. That is the third worst 3-game stretch in the Super Bowl era for a defense in the second half. 117 points over the last 5 second halves of games. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Just staggering. Historical, hilarious, all of it in one. Offensively, playing pretty well, right? Joe Flacco, 40 years of age. He's out there slinging it, getting the ball to your playmakers. We'll talk about Yoshi. He finally had a good game in a second. T. Higgins, tremendous all-time stuff from him. Jamar, solid as always. You have scored 80 points the last 2 weeks. 80 over a 2-week stretch in the National Football League. And your record sits at 0-2. It sits at 0-2. Defensively, you have allowed at least 27 points in 8 straight games. You do that one more time. You do that against Pittsburgh out of the bye. That will tie an NFL record if you do it 9 times, 9 games in a row, 27 or more points. Staggering. Just absolutely staggering when you take a look at some of those stats for the Bengals defense. Again, shout out Paul Dehner Jr. That's in his piece. Check it out if you haven't done so already over at The Athletic. But we're asking ourselves the same kinds of questions we've been asking ourselves here for several weeks. What more can you say? You look at guys on this defense and you go, oh, he's not good enough. He's not good enough. He's not good enough. Doesn't look like a professional defense whatsoever. You can't apply any pass rush. You can't stop the run at all. It wasn't even DeAndre Swift. It's a guy that was taken in the 7th round out of Rutgers. Could you imagine a 7th rounder for the Bengals playing that well? Right? I mean, you took Taj Brooks around before they took their guy out of Rutgers. And he went out there and he absolutely exposed you in the game. Caleb Williams, you knew his legs were going to be a threat in this game, and they certainly were. And one other thing about this game is the quarterback didn't even play that well for the Chicago Bears. How many times did Caleb Williams miss? Or you're sitting there and he's holding the ball and you're like, what's he doing? And then, he makes a bad decision, or he has to throw it away, or he misses with an inaccurate ball to one of his playmakers. That happened so often throughout the duration of this game, and you still gave up 47 points to the Chicago Bears. How's that going to look against Josh Allen? How's that going to look against Lamar Jackson twice? How's that going to look against Aaron Rodgers when you have to go against him? How's that going to look against Drake May? All those quarterbacks I just listed are better than this guy and Caleb Williams, and you've let him and Justin Fields now in back-to-back weeks absolutely tear you apart. And I've got some issues with the accountability. Look, I mean, when you're in a spot like this and you're losing games, right, and you're losing them to bad teams and you're scoring a bunch of points in the process, there isn't much to say. I understand that. But no leadership at all from this defense. Chris Jenkins, Shamar Stewart, Jordan Battle all declined to speak to the media after the game. Now, am I going to sit here and say, if you ever decline to speak to the media that you're, just a massive part of the issue and you're a clown for doing it? I'm not going to say that, but in this spot, you need some leadership. You need some leadership. You can't sit there in front of your locker for 5 minutes and answer hard questions and just say, you know what, we got to keep working. We got to get this turned around, take some ownership. No, you're going to – and apparently there were some people in the locker room that were laughing about it in the process there as well that were like, we'll talk to you Monday. Ridiculous. Chris Jenkins, Shamar Stewart, Jordan Battle, all those guys, as far as I'm concerned, cut them. Move on from them. Shamar Stewart, he's your first-round pick. You took him 17 overall. He's only played in a handful of games as a Cincinnati Bengal. I've seen enough. What can he do to help this team? You knew it was an aggressive pick, or basically just an idiotic pick when you took him. A guy that he might have a really high ceiling, but his floor is really, really low, and he's hanging out near his floor right now because he ain't doing nothing right. He couldn't get any sacks in college. He's continuing not to be able to do that. He couldn't get any tackles in college either. That's continuing. He's running in the wrong direction. All right, some of these clips of Shamar Stewart, man, are just he's just running in the wrong direction of plays that are taking place. Ball's going one way, he's going the other. He's getting bullied out there on the field as well. Now, he's a kid, 21, 22 years of age, right? And maybe you have to stick with him over the course of the next few years because you drafted him, right? But just a total disaster of a first-round pick. Another one for Duke Tobin. Chris Jenkins Jr. took him in the second round last year. What's he doing? Nothing. Absolutely nothing there at all. And Jordan Battle, the one guy where we said, you know what, maybe there's some leadership here with Jordan Battle. He took some accountability after the Jets game. Maybe he can be a guy that can be on your defense for several years. Well, clearly not. Clearly not. As he made the play or didn't make the play that ultimately ended the game, when you had the tight end, Colston Loveland, running free down the seam, and he's there ready to make the tackle, and he just kind of lowers his shoulder, runs into him, and that's it. Ball game. Ball game there for the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I don't know how you get this cleaned up. It's going to take a long time, by the way, and I mentioned this on Off the Bench. In this league, if you want to have success, you can't just build a team through free agency. You can't do it. Right? Nobody does it in the National Football League. Now, if you have a solid core in place, can you go get a guy in free agency or maybe 2 or 3 guys in free agency that can help bring your team over the top and be really good? Yes, that can happen. But at your core, you have to be a team that drafts and develops if you want to have success in this league. Kansas City Chiefs, they do a great job of it. New England, throughout the dynasty, they've done a great job of it. All right, even Pittsburgh and Baltimore, who have lacked a little bit of postseason success here recently, they're always in the mix. They're always winning games. Why? They can draft and they can develop. Cincinnati can't draft and they can't develop. And that's why they're in this position that they're in. And look, it's dark for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's dark. And we said it when Zach Taylor opted to hire Al Golden. So that's the single most important decision of Zach Taylor's career here to this point, who he brought in as the DC. And really, they didn't do much due diligence when it came to filling that vacancy when they fired Lou Anarumo. Yeah, they interviewed the guy in Vegas, but all along, Al Golden was their guy. He was in the national title run with Notre Dame, and they were just kind of waiting until he was available, and they were going to bring him in as the DC. Zach already had his mind made up, and he felt good about it. I felt fine about it too, right? Because he's been here. Al Golden had been here as a linebacker coach, of course, had great success at Notre Dame. I was on board when it came to hiring Al Golden. But that appears to be a complete disaster there as well. Now, we tried blaming the defensive coordinator last year when this happened, right, with Lou Anarumo. How'd that work out? Well, now he's in Indianapolis winning a bunch of games with a solid defense. Are we going to sit here and blame the DC again? Well, somebody has to be held accountable for these decisions. Is it Zach Taylor? Is it Al Golden? Is it Duke Tobin? Is it the Brown family? Is it the personnel that you put out there on the field? I think everybody is to blame here in this situation. When it's this bad, historically bad, hilariously bad, almost impossibly bad on the defensive side of the football, you can't just blame one guy, right? It's a collection of lots of people and lots of bad decisions throughout this process. And you can make the argument who you think is at the top of the list. I've sat here on this show. I've sat here in previous spots there as well and defended Zach Taylor. When you're in a spot like this, it's hard to sit here and defend Zach Taylor. It really is. He's the head coach. Offense looks great. Offense always looks great after the first couple of weeks with Zach Taylor. But at the end of the day, he's not the offense coordinator. He's not the quarterback coach. He is the head coach, and he is just as responsible as anybody for what is happening on the defensive side of the football. I personally wouldn't fire him right now. People might laugh at that and say that's insane. All right? But if they did, I'm not going to say he deserves it, but most other teams in the NFL would make that decision right here going into a bye. If this was the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, even the Steelers or the Ravens in your division, and exactly what is transpiring here in Cincinnati was transpiring in one of these other places, and Zach was the head coach, he would be gone going into the bye. Now, the Bengals don't operate like that. They never have. Marvin Lewis was here forever, right? And Zach Taylor, obviously. Yeah, he went to the Super Bowl, went to the AFC Championship. Past couple of years after that haven't been good. Still winning seasons, by the way. But it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows here in the Zach Taylor era, and we all remember his first year before Joe Burrow got here as well. So a lot of people in the NFL wouldn't have this long of a leash. But the Cincinnati Bengals allow their coaches to have a bit of a longer leash. Why? Because they're not given as much as plenty of other teams, right? I mean, Zach's making, $4 or $5 million, which to you and me, yeah, sign me up. That's great. But then you look at, guys like Andy Reid or Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh, the top of the league as far as coaches getting paid, and they're all hovering around the $10 million range. Zach's not even getting half of that. All right, so that's one thing, right? From a resource perspective, the scouting department, there's probably Joe and Jim are in there. There's just two guys. That's their scouting department, right? So that's a problem, right? The facilities, the stadium here at Cincinnati, that's all bottom of the league stuff. And maybe that contributes to why he has a bit of a longer leash and why this job in the past has had a bit of a longer leash than other places across the National Football League. And Zach Taylor is not free of criticism at all. Zach Taylor deserves a lot of criticism for how things have transpired here this year. But to me, I look a step above it. And when I'm looking at the guy that needs to be held accountable and the guy that probably should be without his job, to me it's Duke Tobin. Because it's miss after miss after miss for Duke Tobin. And it's somehow getting worse and worse and worse. And you tried new coaching on the defensive side of the football. You tried to get rid of Lou Anarumo and bring in Al Golden. And it's somehow worse. We all sat here and said, how could this possibly be worse going into the 2025 season? I didn't think it was possible. And somehow it is here for the Cincinnati Bengals team. And you look at them, if they don't get any turnovers, and the Bengals haven't forced any turnovers defensively the past couple of weeks, and Zach likes to point to that. But, look, you can't rely on that in the National Football League. Right? I get they lost the turnover battle, but if you're sitting there and only losing the turnover battle by 1 or it's 1-0 or 0-0, you got to be able to win some of those games. And as much as we all would like the Bengals defense to be able to force some turnovers a little bit more, you can't sit there and rely on that as a winning recipe for you as a football team. You have to find a way to get off the field on third down. You got to find a way to create some negative plays for the offense. I mean, this Bears team, they're never in the backfield, this Bengals defense. It's like, well, they're at least going to get 4 or 5 yards here on this play, and that means you're in third and short all game long, and it's hard to get off the field on third and short. It's just the reality of the situation. Very hard to get off the field on third and short. A lot easier to do it when you're 3rd and 10. Bengals never really put the Bears in that kind of position. That made things very, very difficult there as well. And I just think, look, you need some kind of new presence, some kind of new voice. And to me, that's why I look at Duke Tobin and not Zach Taylor when it comes to this organization. I get that Zach Taylor is the voice inside the locker room because he's the head coach. But you got to have a change in style, a change in mindset. Because what you're doing is not even close. And the players, it comes down to the players on the football field not being good enough. And you can just watch it with your own eyes. Go watch any NFL game. You can go watch the other bad defenses in the NFL. And at times, they will resemble a professional defense. Where you're like, oh, that guy's really good, right? Oh, they got in the backfield that time. Oh, that was a really nice tackle in the open field. You never see that for Cincinnati. And you can blame coaching all you want. Coaching definitely deserves blame. But these guys on defense just are not good. They do not look like professional athletes. They're so unathletic, they're so slow, and they're so soft. And these things can't continue to happen for a professional football team. It just absolutely cannot happen. And that's the situation that Cincinnati finds themselves in right now. And the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant, and the reason why if I were calling the shots, I wouldn't pull the trigger on Zach Taylor just yet, is because you came into this situation, you came into this season, and you said, you know what, our identity as a football team is Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. We're going to pay all those guys life-changing money. They are going to be the face of our organization. We're going to go win world championships with them. Well, in year one of those two guys, Higgins and Chase, getting paid, and if you want to completely blow the whole operation up, I think that just sets you back another year. You want to move off Zach Taylor? Fine. You ain't winning in year one with the new guy. Just don't think it happens. And turnarounds can happen quick in this league. They really can. But as far as getting a turnaround and winning a Super Bowl in year one, not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. Now, you could sit there and say, they're not winning a Super Bowl with Zach Taylor, and that's fine. You can have that argument. But I just think you're in a spot right now. You don't have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase forever. They're receivers, right? Their prime is not as long as a quarterback's prime. We can talk about Joe Burrow in a second. But this team is going to look a heck of a lot different when T. Higgins and Jamar Chase aren't playing at the level in which they're at. You have to capitalize here, now. You can't sit around and mess around, right, and go a year back, right, or take another off year. This is an off year. You got to be ready to go next year in 2026. And I think if you fire the head coach, there's a less likely chance that can happen than if you keep him. Because, again, this team's won games in the past. They've won in big moments. They've gone on runs with the foundation that is in place. And if you get rid of Zach, but sit there and say, well, we're going to keep T, Joe, and Jamar as our core, I don't know if that exactly works for me. Now, look, there's plenty of coaches that could come in and have success with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. I'm not naive to that. I understand that. But this notion that, the Bengals are going to get Mike Tomlin or Harbaugh, no, they're not, right? They're going to pay $4 or $5 million. If Mike Tomlin or Harbaugh were available on the open market, there's going to be a team throwing a heck of a lot more than $4 or $5 million. And the counter argument to that is, well, they don't all have Joe Burrow. Fair. But Joe Burrow, of course, can't stay out there on the football field. You're not going to get some huge name to come in. You're going to get Ryan Day to leave Ohio State and take an $8 million pay cut and deal with this mess? No. Right? You're going to get some top-of-the-line coordinator, whoever the hot guy is, this offseason cycle to come here in Cincinnati for $4 or $5 million with no stability in the organization from an ownership front office perspective? No, you're not, right? You're going to have that guy that, is kind of a quarterback coach or just kind of a low coordinator that not a ton of people are talking about. That's who Zach Taylor was as a candidate. You're not going to get some huge name to come in here and lead your team, right? It's not going to be some drastic change. You're not going to find a Jim or John Harbaugh to come in here and fix this thing. You're going to have another coordinator, another position coach, another young guy. You want to go defense? Fine. I think that's a mistake. I think in this league, you got to have your head coach on the as an offensive mind. I just think that's where I'm at personally. Clearly, that's not working for the Bengals. I understand that. But you're not going to bring in some top-of-the-line candidate here to coach your football team. Just isn't going to happen. Just absolutely is not going to happen. We'll talk a little bit more about the deadline, how the Bengals should approach it. Talk a little bit more about Duke Tobin. Talk a little bit more about Zach Taylor. But I think we have to have this conversation as well. And we'll flip things a little bit here on a positive light. And that's Joe Flacco, right? Because what Joe Flacco did in this game is absolutely unbelievable. What Joe Flacco has done since being traded here to the Cincinnati Bengals is absolutely unbelievable. And he deserves a lot of love and a lot of credit for that. All right? I mean, this is what the defense stole from Joe Flacco is really hard to wrap your head around because they stole not only an all-time game in this franchise, but an all-time type of performance league-wide in the history of the NFL for what Joe Flacco was able to do in this game. 31 of 47, 470, 4 tuds. Right? This is a guy that had a serious injury. We tried to relay to you just how drastic of an injury an AC joint is on your throwing shoulder for a quarterback. Zach was saying after the game that he could hardly hold his arm up throughout the duration of the week. Ted Karras is sitting there saying, yeah, you should have seen it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Well, it's an AC joint. What do you mean see it? You could see it too. It was popping out, and he's sitting there playing through that. Unbelievable that he was able to do it. This is a guy that during warm-ups wasn't even able to go throughout the duration of the warm-up because he wanted to be fully ready to go for the game. Wasn't even able to warm up fully for this game because of that injury. And you saw clearly it was bugging him. He mentioned after the game, funnily enough, it was some of the short throws, the checkdowns, where it was like, that didn't look great. That was kind of weird. And you saw a couple to Chase Brown there. It was like, he's standing right there and you can't get him the ball. He's in serious, serious pain, right? And he was still able to be accurate with the football, all right? Work outside the numbers, work down the seam. Incredible performance from Joe Flacco. Even got hit a time or two in the game as well. So the fact that he was able to go out there and play like this is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the Bengals, I guess they deserve credit for making the trade. I mean, you could argue it's a no-brainer to just give up a day 3 pick for Joe Flacco, fine, but they went out and did it. And just all-time stuff. And Zach said after the game, this will be remembered forever, his performance out there. And it will be. Now, unfortunately, it'll be remembered from a Bengals standpoint in heartbreaking fashion because you lost the game. But, I mean, just all-time stuff for Joe Flacco. And what he's been able to do for this team over the course of the past few weeks, I mean, it's truly, truly unbelievable. I mean, if the Bengals defense was just bad, right, you go 3-0 over these games, and you're sitting there talking about the Bengals winning this division, right, because you win these past 2 games. If you just had a bad defense, you win these past 2 games. but it's an otherworldly, all-time bad defense for the Bengals, and unfortunately, that's why you have him. Joe Flacco deserves a ton of credit there as well. Couldn't really run the ball, but you found yourself in a shootout, right? The Bengals have been in the spot before many times with Joe Burrow where it's like, well, we're scoring a bunch of points offensively, having great success throwing the football. We can't really afford to just sit here and run it. They ran it at times, when they had to. There was a couple of runs early on in the game from Chase Brown that were productive, but you pretty much had to move off that. But you were having such great success in the pass game where it was fine. And the receivers, man. How good were they in this game? Yoshi, he's been getting a lot of crap for his performance this year, all the drop passes that he has had, and he deserves a lot of the criticism that came his way. But what a great performance from Andrei Iosivas, how he was able to put that behind him, go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to play winning football for my team. And those 5 catches he had were unbelievable, 66 yards, touchdown. Should have been, the biggest moment of his career where he catches that touchdown from Flacco and you go on and you win the game. But obviously your defense isn't able to go out there and get a stop, and that prevents that from happening. Did have the play where he ran out of bounds in the end zone, right? You think it's going to be a touchdown, then Flacco throws the pick. You think the game's over at that point. Obviously it was not. But Yoshi deserves a lot of credit for how he played out there. And there's been a lot of people, myself included, that say get Mitchell Tinsley out there more, get Yoshi off the field. Zach Taylor, he said, we're going to get Tinsley out there a little bit. He had a big catch in the game as well. Only 2 targets. Seemingly when the ball goes his way, he makes a play. But Yoshi really responded in a big way. Was happy for him with his performance out there. T, all-time stuff. What did we say? What did we say in the Jets game? 2 targets for T is unacceptable. Can't happen. Well, he got 9 in this game, and he caught 7 of them, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, that one on the deep ball down the sideline, one of the best catches you'll see this year. Just incredible play from T. Higgins. Hopefully he's all right. Obviously got banged up at the end of the game, wasn't able to be out there with his teammates throughout the closure of that football game. But just an unbelievable effort from T. Higgins. Hopefully he's good going forward. That's a guy. Again, Burrow, and Flacco's doing it in the presence of Burrow not being there, but Higgins, Chase, they're going to score points, right? And if you have a good quarterback out there, right, you got an all-time quarterback in Burrow, but this guy, Joe Flacco, at 40 years of age, is playing tremendous. You just need a defense to hang in there, right? Get off the field every once in a while, right? Make a play, make a tackle, make a stop, get a pick, force a fumble. And none of that has happened over the course of the past 2 weeks, or really the past 3 weeks, for the Cincinnati Bengals. Hudson at the tight end spot, Noah Fant. We'll talk about trades here in a second, but they contributed, and everybody really along the offensive side deserves a lot of credit. Jamar, that was like a quiet game for Jamar, and he still had over 100 yards. 8 targets, 6 catches, 111 yards, 18.5 average, and he was tremendous there in the game as well. And the offensive line deserves some credit. We all were sitting here at the beginning of the year talking about the offensive line, how bad it is, right? And they still got to get it figured out, right? Orlando Brown Jr., that guy absolutely stinks. We talk about the guys stinking on the defense. Orlando Brown Jr. is one of your worst players, and you're paying him a ton of money. That's a big, big issue. But how the rest of those guys have developed, we talk about the Bengals asking a lot for their rookies. How about Fairchild and Jalen Rivers? Nobody thought Jalen Rivers would be a starter this year. And he's come in. They've asked him to play tackle. They've asked him to play guard. And he's really doing a good job. He's hanging in there. Maybe he's a guy that you can have as a starter going forward. Look, I get the offensive line is not where you need it to be, right? But when you put a competent quarterback back there, and that obviously is what Joe Flacco is, you're having some success. That ball's coming out. They're doing a nice job. They're running the football a little bit better. The offensive line and the improvement that they have shown from week 1 to now is drastic. And they deserve some credit for that. And that makes you feel a little bit optimistic, right? Because this team and this franchise is all Joe Burrow and his availability out there. And how they've played in recent weeks, that gives you a little bit more confidence that things might be okay on that side going forward. Orlando Brown Jr., you need a left tackle. You put Mims over there on the left side going forward. I don't know. We'll see. I don't see a world where Orlando Brown Jr. can come back as the left tackle of this team. Drastic change needs to happen as it relates to your personnel, as it relates to your coaching, as it relates to your executives in your front office. Orlando Brown Jr.'s got to go. But the other 4 guys, Karras has bounced back nicely. You got 2 rookie guards playing solid football. Mims is good. It's just about him staying healthy. We all understand that. They've made some significant improvements. Scott Peters, we were banging on him for the majority of this year. He's done a nice job. Unfortunately for them, the defensive issues have masked any improvement that they've made. But Scott Peters, Zach Taylor along the offensive line, the rookies that are in there contributing, that's been solid, and that gives you a little bit of optimism there on the offensive side. Because, again, you have T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase. Now all of a sudden you got some protection there up front from your offensive line, it's going to be a force to be reckoned with throughout the course of the next few years. But the defense, of course, is what is holding you back. So I did want to show a little bit of love there offensively. And again, Zach Taylor deserves some credit for that. I think his game plan offensively has been tremendous over the course of the past few weeks. Now, I think the one thing that could potentially save Zach Taylor, if anything, and he's done a great job calling the plays. He really has. But he has always struggled, and anybody would probably struggle with this as well. Or not anybody. I mean, there's people, Reed and McVay and Shanahan, they don't really struggle. But look, to call the plays and be the head coach is difficult. It is. And I think we've talked about him passing off the play calling for quite some time. I think if he is going to stay here as the head coach of the Bengals in 26, again, most people watching this don't want that to be the case. But if he is, he's got to put more of his time and energy into the defense, right? Because I think Zach Taylor, during his career here in Cincinnati, was that, I'm going to work with the quarterback. I'm going to work with Joe, Andy the first year, right? And I'm going to work with the offense, installing the game plan, and put all of my time into the offense. And Lou, he's got the defense. And this year it was Al Golden. He knows what he's doing. He's got the defense there as well. That can't happen. That can't happen. I don't want to sit here and make collegiate comparisons, but look at Ohio State. Ryan Day called the plays, and he was fine calling the plays, right? And that's a big reason why he got the job, probably the number one reason why he got the job, because he was a great play caller. But after some self-scouting and after realizing that, we're winning a bunch of games, and we're still good on offense, and I'm doing a fine job, it's holding us back a little bit because the defense needs a little bit more of my attention. And Ryan Day is an offensive guy. He took over that more CEO type, designated the play calling elsewhere, and look at Ohio State. Won the national title last year, and they look like world beaters again this year. I think that could help Zach Taylor a little bit. Like, you know what? You've done a fine job. We sit here and we criticize your run game. Fine. We pick you apart sometimes for your play calls in big situations like we would for anybody, right? But if you really want to lead this team, right, and be the head coach here and somebody that you can trust, maybe you got to give the play calling to someone else. Right? Now, we'll see if he even has that opportunity or if they decide to move off him or not. But I think that would be a good decision for the Bengals and Zach Taylor going forward if they ultimately decided to do that. And I understand. I'm not naive. I know most people listening to this think it's crazy that I'm suggesting that Zach Taylor should potentially get another opportunity. Let me be very clear here. Look, if the Bengals fire Zach Taylor and we're sitting here doing this show tomorrow, I'm not going to raise an uprising, right, that they fired Zach Taylor. Again, most teams in this spot would make this decision. But where you're at as an organization with the core that you have in place, that was all built around obviously Joe Burrow, Higgins, and Jamar Chase, but also Zach Taylor was a part of that there as well. And I just think that if you move off the head coach, but you keep the core in place, because I don't think anybody should be suggesting that you move off Higgins, Chase, or Burrow. If you're doing that, then I can't help you at that point. If you're making those kind of comments, I can't help you at that point. And I just think you bring in a new guy, there's going to be growing pains with that. And look, maybe they need growing pains. Maybe they need drastic change from a head coach perspective. Maybe they do. But I just think it sets you back a little bit too far. But look, this thing isn't over yet. We're all sitting here talking about the season as if it's over, right? Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami, Arizona, Cleveland, right? If you lose all those games, then I'm going to sit up here and say, well, you got to change who's the head coach, all right? But just going into the bye without your quarterback, tough situation to be in. Ultimately for this football team. Hey, you transition this conversation a little bit to the trade deadline. Again, the Bengals have it, so the deadline's here and the bye is also here. So that's kind of, you see a lot of teams in the NFL that probably would blow it up here at this point. But you went into this season with Super Bowl aspirations, Super Bowl expectations. That's not hyperbolic. That's the reality. You came into the season saying, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. And I think if you don't win the Super Bowl, which you're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, I think it's a failure, right? Even if you got to the playoffs and won a playoff game and lost, I would say it's a failure. I don't think that is the case for every team in the National Football League. For example, if the Indianapolis Colts don't win the Super Bowl this year, I don't think it's a failure for the Indianapolis Colts. But when you have a core in place, when you've been there in the past, you have success in the postseason, and you have Joe Burrow, it's always Super Bowl or bust. And the Bengals aren't winning the Super Bowl, so this year's a bust, a complete bust. And how are you going to find ways to change that going forward? How can you make sure it's Super Bowl or bust again next year? If you fire everybody and get rid of everybody, but still have those three guys, Joe Burrow, Higgins, and Jamar Chase, I don't see how that can still be your expectation, Super Bowl or bust. So now there's decisions that need to be made at the deadline. Obviously, there's decisions that need to be made with Duke Tobin, with Zach Taylor, with Al Golden, and what you do with this roster. Trey Hendrickson made this point on off the bench. I'm not the biggest Trey Hendrickson guy. I think he's got some selfish ways about him. All right, I think there's certainly some red flags with how he carries himself, particularly in the offseason. And I get there's people out there that are questioning whether or not he is actually fully incapable of playing football right now. I understand that. Now, I'm going to lean on the side that he is actually hurt and can't go out there and help this team, despite the fact he's on a one-year deal, just because Trey Hendrickson's a football guy. Does some questionable things, says some questionable things. I don't agree with a lot of it. I don't agree with a lot of his actions. But when he's in between the lines, he's giving you everything he's got, and he's competing out there on the football field. And I do believe it sucks to live in the what-if world, right? It's really, there's no point in living in the what-if world. But I do truly believe that if Hendrickson is out there for the Bear game and for the Jet game, you win, despite how bad your defense is. Because why is Trey Hendrickson on this team? Why did you give him that $30 million contract this year? Because he's a closer, and that's what you need. You don't have a closer, right? If you're in this league and you have a great quarterback, you also need a great closer on the other side of the ball. And the Bengals have one in Trey Hendrickson, but he hasn't been able to go out there and be available. 51 seconds, right? You give the ball back to Chicago in the game yesterday. No hate Trey Hendrickson. You knew they were getting in field goal range. Was it kind of a bit of a surprise? Oh, wow, they actually are going to score a touchdown there as well. Yeah, I shouldn't have been surprised by that, but I kind of was, right? I kind of was. But there was no doubt they were getting in range. It was just a matter of if Santos was going to make the kick or not. And then all of a sudden they just decide to score. I think they can close that out if Trey Hendrickson's out there on the football field. Same with the Jet game. Multiple two-score leads in the fourth quarter. Trey Hendrickson can create a big negative play. You definitely win that game. But what use does Trey Hendrickson have from now to the end of the year? The only thing he's going to do is potentially get you a little bit worse of a draft pick because you're not making the playoffs here at this point. You're not. Right? Joe Burrow, I mean, maybe he comes back because he wants to come back and get some reps before the 2026 season. We can have that conversation later in the week. But he's not going to be back in a situation where they're playing meaningful football games, right? So if that's not going to be the case, then why do you roll Trey Hendrickson out there and keep him on this team, right? He's gone after this year. There's no world where he comes back for Cincinnati next year and plays at that edge rusher spot. Not going to happen. And if you trade him here at this point, and I think very clearly the Cincinnati Bengals need to trade Trey Hendrickson right now. We better be talking about it on tomorrow's show, right? Leading into the deadline, and we better be doing a live show around deadline time tomorrow about the Bengals trading Trey Hendrickson because it just needs to happen. And look, can you get as much for him now as you could have gotten if you traded him in the offseason? Probably not. But Howie Roseman just made a deal. He's, by the way, already making several deals. Just traded for Jair from Baltimore, and then he trades for Jalen Phillips. That's aggressive, right? That's a winning mindset. Look at the Eagles. Well, yeah, they're one of the best organizations in the National Football League. Jalen Phillips is acquired from the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins are reeling, right? Third-round pick. Would I give up Trey Hendrickson for a third-round pick right now? Absolutely. Absolutely. Could you potentially get a second-round pick for him? Maybe if he was healthy. You probably can't. But third-round pick, I'm ready. Fourth round, unfortunate. But third-round pick, you need another draft pick. Again, we talked about how important it was going into this draft this past April that you hit on all these guys, right? Because you're paying Joe Burrow. That has to happen. When you're paying the quarterback, you got to hit on your draft picks, right? There's not really much room for error. And the Bengals seemingly have whiffed on their draft picks. Maybe Dylan Fairchild and Jalen Rivers are good, all right? But that's the offensive side. Barrett Carter, Demetrius Knight, what's he done? They look like rookies out there. Doesn't look too good. Shamar Stewart obviously has been a complete disaster there as well. So I'm looking to move off Trey Hendrickson. I'm looking to move off Logan Wilson. Now, obviously, once you get past Trey Hendrickson, you're not getting a ton of resources back for these guys, right? I understand that. You're getting a day 3 pick for Logan Wilson. We'll take it. He doesn't want to be here. He ain't going to be here next year. Day 3 pick. Let's get him. Cam Taylor-Britt, same thing. Not getting much for him. Probably get a 7th-round pick for him. We'll take it at this point. See ya, Cam Taylor-Britt. Those, I think, moves absolutely have to happen. By the deadline, Hendrickson needs to be gone and Logan Wilson needs to be gone. And I appreciate those guys, and I appreciate what they've given to this team. But what are they going to do for you at this point? The playoffs that's not something that's going to happen, and you need to start stockpiling your draft picks a little bit here at this point. You have to move off Trey Hendrickson, and you have to move off Logan Wilson. I'd move off CTB as well. Can you get a pick for him? I don't know. We'll see. But I would move off him additionally. Stockpile those picks, right? And then you move off the guy that's making the decisions. Now, do you fire Duke Tobin here mid-season? I don't know, right? Obviously, the Dolphins just did that with their GM, Chris Greer, and, of course, the guy that steps in as the GM just made this deal with Howie Roseman and the Eagles. Does that happen now for Cincinnati? Can you fire Duke Tobin and then put somebody else in to make a trade? I mean, that's not going to happen. I mean, the deadline's tomorrow, right? So Duke Tobin's probably going to be pulling the strings here, making these moves. But I just don't see how you can stockpile these draft picks and then say, all right, we'll trust Duke Tobin again to make these picks and make them correctly. There's got to be an executive in this league, an up-and-coming guy that's either with the Rams or the Eagles, right? Maybe the Bills or the Chiefs, where you bring him in here and he's just raring to be a GM, and we'll see if you give him a GM title, if he's just the director of player personnel again. But you got to get a new voice in here. You got to get a new mind in here, and he's got to, make some better decisions. Because, again, tons of people are to blame. But you can't sit there and tell me that there is a coach, right? You can't put Andy Reid as the head coach of this team and he'll fix the defense. Would he be a little bit better defensively than Zach Taylor is? Maybe, right? But let's be very clear here. Spags is running that show defensively. We just talked about Zach Taylor and how all his time is towards play calling and the quarterback and the offense. Very similar with Andy Reid, but he's got Spags. And he trusts Spags to go out there and execute at a high level for their defense. There's not a coach that's going to come in here and fix this defense, right? You saw it with the Chargers a couple of years ago, right? The Chargers, that defense was bad, but you're looking around that unit going, they shouldn't be that bad. Then you bring in a coach, and Harbaugh cleans it up immediately, the defense, right? You're not in a position like that for Cincinnati. It's very clear. I don't care what scheme you bring. I don't care how alpha you are in the meeting room. You're not going to change rolling these same guys out there. And that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to fully blame Zach Taylor, because he's just working with what he's got. And what he's got defensively ain't good. Ain't good at all. Absolutely is not good at all. So I'm moving off Logan Wilson. I'm moving off Trey Hendrickson. If you can move off CTB, I'm moving off him too, and I'm trying to stockpile these picks, right? And then in a perfect world, if you're the Bengals, then you're playing with all types of youth, right? But you're basically already doing that here at this point. You're seeing if Josh Newton could potentially be a guy for you. And I've got my questions there. Clearly, DJ Turner, we'll talk about him in a second. Clearly, he's a good player, right? But then you see how you can do, how you can win the rest of the way. Can this defense get any better? Can this defense get any better? And then everybody gets evaluated the rest of the way out. And then you're talking about, well, are you cutting guys? You're trading guys this offseason? What are you doing? But the guys that you can move off of right now, I think there's three. Trey Hendrickson, Logan Wilson, Cam Taylor-Britt. You make those three moves, get some more youth there in the lineup, and see what you can do going forward. See what you can do there moving forward. Do you fire Al Golden right now? You could, right? I think based on what he's done and how this defense looks, it's a fireable offense. Make no mistake about it. We'll see if ultimately he's given another chance to finish out the year or potentially come back. But I don't know. But then you're sitting there, it's like, well, you keep firing these defensive coordinators. And it's like, well, do you keep your head coach? Does Zach need to be fired there as well? So I don't know. But Al Golden clearly isn't working. And, maybe he'll go take the Penn State job and you try to bring in somebody else. But, again, I don't think you can sit here and bang on Al Golden and Zach Taylor all you want. But look at these guys on the field. Just watch, right? We gave you all the stats from Paul Dehner Jr. to start. Historically bad, hilariously bad defense, right? I mean, it doesn't look professional. It doesn't look close, right? No athleticism, no speed, no toughness, not enough size. Can't get guys on the ground. Can't create turnovers. No leadership. It's just not close. It's not close. And there's not a coach that you can bring in here. You can't bring Spags in here from Kansas City. He's not going to fix this. Nobody is going to fix this. You need new players and different players out on the field. That's the only way this thing gets cleaned up, ever, is if you get some new guys out on the field. So that's a lot there, obviously, as it relates to Cincinnati Bengals. Total mess with this organization right now. You saw some good things, right? I mean, how about let's just sit there and appreciate the game for a second, right? Obviously, we're all ticked off about how it ended and how bad the defense is, but what a game in the NFL. I mean, if you're neutral, if you're not a Bear or Bengal fan, you just watch that game and go, wow, that's absolutely unbelievable. How about the special teams, by the way, for the Bengals coming through? We were kind of talking about at length. I was like, Charlie Jones, he goes out there and he runs out to the 25 and then gets blasted. And then he goes out there again, does it again, and he does it again. Charlie Jones now, that's all of a sudden three house calls, right? 3 years in a row for Charlie Jones. He brings back the opening kick. What a jolt to that game. What a great start that was. So some, special teams there. I think that's certainly a step in the right direction. You saw P. Ryan had a couple of big runs. We'll keep an eye on his injury. It looked like it was really bad there at first. Then he runs off the field. Obviously, was not going to come back to the game. Had the ankle injury, but that was promising. From a kickoff return. As far as defending, right, when the Bears are running it back, I thought the Bengals did a solid job. They had struggled with that. So Darren Simmons, his unit, was solid there as well on the special teams side. McPherson, look, I like Evan McPherson. I think maybe I'm not going to say the rookie was a fluke, but, he's got to make that kick. And I understand Zach Taylor deserves a lot of criticism for how that operation was handled, and was he borderline rush? Now, the bottom line is he had went through his routine, and he was ready to go, and they snapped it with 1 second, and it was, 53, 54 yards, and he couldn't get it there. I don't know if he chunked it or mishit it or what. But that can't happen. That kick's got to go through. Does Zach Taylor need to make that decision a little bit quicker? Yes, absolutely. But you're an NFL kicker. Has to go through. And it didn't go through. But the Bengals recover an onside kick. How about that? That was watching that game was a situation where I'm like, well, if they get this onside kick, they're going to win this game. Obviously, that didn't end up being true because they got the onside kick and they still lost. But once they recovered it, I was like, well, they're going to have a lead. They're going to go down and score. The Bears defense could absolutely not stop Joe Flacco. And, that was the case for the entirety of the game, really. There was a couple of drives early, fourth quarter where they got the sack. They hit him a few times. I forget exactly when the sack fumble happened. But that was obviously a big play. But beyond that is that the Bengals were moving the ball at will against this Bears team. So they get the onside kick. Mental mistake by Chicago, right? Again, if you're playing a really good team, and that ain't going to happen. A guy touches the football before it goes 10 yards, gives Cincinnati an opportunity to recover it because the kick wasn't going 10 yards, right? The Bears had a very easy opportunity there to get that kick, but then you get the onside, and oh, my goodness, you're going to go win the football game, and then obviously you score a little bit too quickly. And I thought Zach did a tremendous job of how he handled the drive. People are like, oh, you gave it back you gave him too much time. Well, you ran the ball. Like, what more do you want? You want to run it again? And then you sit there and only have a couple plays to score? That's like, well, you ran it twice and didn't score. Why'd you do that, right? Thought he handled that perfectly, and then you look up and 51 seconds, this defense, timeout, probably cooked. But maybe somebody steps up and makes a stop. Maybe you get 1 sack, right? 1 sack in that spot, you're gold. 1 TFL in that spot, you're gold. Turnover, obviously, you're gold. And nobody made an opportunity nobody went out there and made a play. Plenty of opportunities to make one, and obviously we're not able to capitalize in that moment. And that's why you lose. That's why you lose the football game. People are ripping Jordan Battle, as they should. I'm more ticked off that he wouldn't talk to the media, honestly, than the tackle, because even if he makes the tackle, right, then you're going to lose with a field goal, right? But it's just the fact that was just another embarrassing thing happened for your team. And also people mad about the challenge because it was, overturned and ended up being a touchdown. Hey, you're mad for challenging that? You had to challenge that, right? Because if it's a touchback, you're right back in that thing. And, it is – objectively funny and hilarious that would happen to the Bengals that, they overturn it and it actually is a touchdown. I get that, but you have to challenge that. You have to challenge that because you're in a spot where, if that's a touchback, you're kind of right back in the game. So, offensively, more greatness, but kind of similar to last year. It gets overshadowed by a defense that is just completely and totally incompetent. We'll have more Bengals coverage, obviously, throughout the rest of the week. Hopefully, we're doing an emergency live show because a significant change was made, whether that be a firing or a trade. Be on the lookout for that. We'll still be live, by the way, 10 to 11 for Off the Bench tomorrow, 11 to noon as well tomorrow, and then potentially an emergency live show around the deadline if Cincinnati makes a firing or, of course, makes a trade there as well. So that's our Cincinnati Bengals talk. Plenty of other stuff to talk about. I only got about 10 minutes here, so I'm going to have to divvy some of this up across the rest of the week. But big games in the NFL. The Chiefs lose to the Bills. Had the Chiefs at number 1 in my power rankings. Obviously not going to be the case tomorrow. Got to give Buffalo a lot of credit. They looked really good in the game. The defense stepped up, made some plays for the Bills. Josh Allen was tremendous. And all of a sudden now, the AFC is like, maybe the Chiefs aren't as good as we thought. And I know there's certainly a lot of people that were kind of pushing back on the Chiefs. But all of a sudden, Buffalo, you win a game like that at home. there's some belief that they could perhaps be, the best team in the AFC. The Packers lose. I didn't watch any of that game. They lose to the Panthers. I don't know how the Panthers continue to win some games here. That's just absolutely incredible that they're able to do that. Only scored, 16 points in the game. I'll have to go back and see what happened in that game. For that Packers offense, the firepower that they have, the floor calling the shots against a defense in Carolina that ain't anything special. Josh Allen just hung, 40-plus on them the other week. And real concerns for Green Bay, because that's several times now this year where it's like, what are you doing? It's how have you only scored a couple of points here in this game? You got way too much firepower on offense for that to be happening. What else? The Detroit Lions lose to the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings get McCarthy back. And look, I'm not a J.J. McCarthy guy. I don't think he is going to be the answer for him, but he played well enough to win this game. Got to give O'Connell a lot of credit. He had been kind of through the ringer for several weeks after people were saying he's, the tall Sean McVay. He's this great offensive mind, and people were banging on him. He goes out there and gets a huge win against Detroit. So Detroit, another top team in the NFL that they're going to be shaken up as it relates to where they're at in the power rankings, because that's a bad loss. I get it. It's a tough place to play, against Minnesota. Tough defense to go up against, but Detroit shouldn't lose that game. They lost to J.J. McCarthy in that game. So several upsets. Game tonight, Cowboys, Cardinals. Don't believe Kyler Murray is going to be going in that game. So just kind of an game. The Commanders, they have fallen off the face of the earth. Daniels gets hurt. McCaffrey gets hurt. One of their corners, Lattimore, I believe, is out for the year there as well. So there's always that team that makes the playoffs then completely kind of falls off. That looks like the Commanders, maybe the Ravens as well. We'll see if they string together some wins or not. But, it's Commanders, what a horrible season this year. And Jaden Daniels, the one knock was like, well, is he going to be able to stay healthy in the NFL? Stayed healthy in year one and obviously here in year two. Cannot do so whatsoever. World Series games 6 and 7. Game 6 on Halloween night on Friday, and then Game 7. And look, if you're a Toronto Blue Jay fan, you got to be in shambles. And I always get kind of not overly emotional, but when I'm watching the World Series, it just feels bigger to me. Obviously, championship setting, it always feels huge, right? Whether it be college hoops, national title, Super Bowl, NBA Finals, always feels huge. But for whatever reason, the World Series to me always feels even bigger, just because you go through spring training and you go through 162 games where you're playing every day, and then you got this long postseason run, and then boom, it comes down to 2 games, and obviously Game 7 comes down to 1 game, and it's just so much is riding on every single pitch, every single decision, every single ground ball, every single at-bat. And to lose the way Toronto did, I don't know if you can come back from that, right? And there's no guarantee when you get to that level, right? We talked about the Bengals, the Super Bowl in 21. There's no guarantee that you can get back to that level ever going forward. And there's a lot of people, myself included, that were optimistic that you could. But now the next thing you know, you look down, you ain't going to playoffs here in 25. 26 looks like you're going to be a disaster. All of a sudden, that was 5+ years ago since the last time you were at the Super Bowl. So it's just tough in professional sports. But the Jays, man, so many opportunities. Caught the bad break in Game 6 with the ball being lodged. Definitely 1 run was coming home to score there in that situation. Heads up play there by the Dodgers. Kike. By the way, that center fielder whose name escapes me here at this point, I think he was going to try to pick it up, but then Kike came flying in from left field, and he put his hands up. So I think that kind of impacted the decision there not to pick the ball up. Obviously, ended up being a huge decision there in the ball game, and then getting thrown out at second. That just can't happen. That just can't happen, bro. I mean, a fly ball to left field. I mean, you cannot be that far off the bag. Now, I credit to Kike. I don't know if Roberts had him playing in or if he just made that decision on his own. But at the crack of the bat, obviously, watching it on TV, you have the angle of the hitter. And right when he hit it, that's a hit. That's absolutely a hit. Then Kike, he was already playing in, comes flying in, catches it. And you're like, wow, what a great play. And then you're like, oh, my goodness, Barger's off the bag here at second. And then boom. And that's kind of all the momentum there shifted in LA's favor kind of going into Game 7. And you're kind of sitting there like, oh, is Toronto ever going to be able to bounce back from this and put themselves in a spot to even have a chance in Game 7? And obviously they did, because the Blue Jays had chance after chance in that game. The Bo Bichette home run, when it happened, 3-run shot. One of the coolest moments ever. Just an absolute pimp job, no doubter, way out of here. What a story for him, right? Was one of the best players in baseball throughout the duration of the year. All the hits that he had, all the power that he showed. Then he's out through the end of the regular season, through all of the postseason, comes back Game 7. Comes back Game 1 of the World Series, playing a position that he'd never played, second base, makes several good plays there, and then shows up with the bomb. And think about earlier in that game when he was on base. I mean, he can't move out there. He literally cannot move on the base pass. And there was opportunities earlier in that game where it's like, oh, he could have scored if he had some speed out there. But, Bo wasn't able to get home in early innings, and then he makes up for it there with that 3-run shot. And you kind of felt it there for a little bit there. And, the plays they made defensively. How about Varsho? It was towards the middle of that game, maybe fourth inning or so, where he lays out, bases loaded, just tremendous play from Varsho. It ended up being a sac fly, but it felt like a huge play for the Jays. Then Vlad lays out at first base, makes a play, tremendous. And then the Dodgers, I mean, when you have them in a spot, you got to bury him. You absolutely have to bury him. And the Blue Jays did not do that. As you're sitting there, Savage comes in. How about that? I felt kind of bad for him because he has his moment in Game 5 where he's at the top of the world. And unfortunately, people are just going to remember Muncy kind of hitting that home run off him in the 8th. But he came out there in the 7th, limited rest, obviously did a nice job, but missed to Muncy, who had stunk throughout the whole postseason, throughout the World Series. Really had a down year in general for the Dodgers, but he comes up huge. And a 2-run lead as opposed to a 1-run lead in Game 7 of the World Series. I mean, that is just a huge, huge difference. All of a sudden, it feels like LA is back in it. And then from a Cincinnati perspective, kind of interesting or funny, I guess, how it ended with Jeff Hoffman out there. An opportunity to get 3 outs, win a world title for the Blue Jays. They get the first guy out, and then Miguel Rojas. And, so much is made in Major League Baseball about managers and making decisions. And there's no it's very obvious to me that the manager in Major League Baseball doesn't compare to the head coach in the NFL. The head coach in the NFL has a significant say in how his team goes out there and performs in the success of his team. And I think even in some degree, you can argue for basketball there as well. Baseball is definitely at the bottom for how much impact the head coach, so to speak, has. But Dave Roberts, man, he's lost a lot of big games and games he shouldn't have lost as the manager of the Dodgers, but he pulled all the right strings in this game and in this series, to be honest with you, and going with Rojas when they needed a spark, and he absolutely provided it. One of the clutchest home runs ever, tying that game. And then you're sitting there like, oh, my goodness, is this happening? I mean, 9th inning of the World Series, 2 outs away from a title, and this guy goes deep. Older guy, I think 37 years of age, played the game for a long time, was not an everyday guy at all down the stretch here for the Dodgers, and he comes in full count, and Hoffman misses, and he made him pay, tie the game, and then it's like, oh boy. But even in that moment, like the Jays kept fighting back, and he kept thinking, like, even the end Game 6, you're like, wow, that was the Jays' chance. They lost it. And then they keep responding and keep fighting back and put themselves in the 9th inning when they're in a spot to win this game and walk it off. Right, and Ernie Clement, what a dog that guy is. Just an absolute dog. I love me some Ernie Clement. And it was a breaking ball, I believe. I think it was a ball probably. And he just golfs it. And Kike's running back. And you can tell Kike did not have a good beat on that ball. Next thing you know, he's turned around, back to the ball, trying to basically Willie Mays it. And here comes Pages from center field. And however tall he is, crashes into him, makes the catch. Just what a decision from Dave Roberts there in that spot. They had went off of Pages. They had tried to play him early in the series. They had played him throughout the duration of the postseason. Wasn't offering anything offensively. So they were like, you know what, we have to make this switch. We need him out there defensively to save our season. And he comes up with a huge play to send it to extras. I mean, just off the bench, making a play like that, just absolutely ridiculous. And then even in the 11th, Will Smith, one of the biggest home runs you'll ever see. Go-ahead home run, extra innings, Game 7 of the World Series. No doubter. Bieber's in at that point, and the ball was smoked by Will Smith. And then the Jays respond again, and Vladdy, off Yamamoto of all people, gets the double to start that inning for them. And then they're in the spot 1st and 3rd where it's like, you give me a fly ball in the outfield, you tie this game. And then broken bat, Alejandro Kirk, and my heart just dropped when that happened as Mookie, no issues, fields it, taps second on to first. GG's, world title for the Dodgers. But Yamamoto, what a performance from him, all-time stuff. He threw Game 6, got the win, and then they're going to call on him on Game 7, and he's going to throw 2 2/3 innings. I mean, I pitched as a kid, right? I didn't pitch at this level, obviously. And I remember pitching as a kid. The next day, your whole body, it's not just your arm, it's your whole right side that is just in shambles, right? And Yamamoto goes out there and goes Game 7 of the World Series after throwing 100-plus pitches the previous night. All-time stuff. Dodgers win. Heartbreaking for the Jays. And the dynasty, I guess, continues here for the L.A. Dodgers. Got to give them a lot of credit. Their backs were against the wall. They continue to fight, and they pull off a huge win as they win the world title. And we'll see what happens in baseball going forward. Obviously, a lot was made of, if the Dodgers win again, is that going to change stuff with, the CBA? Those conversations coming up around the corner. We'll see. But great all-time World Series. Devastating if you're the Blue Jays. And unbelievable stuff. Dodgers win again. All right. That will do it for this Monday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Clips on YouTube coming up from Off the Bench and our show. You'll find them on our channel, Chatterbox Sports. Don't miss out. We'll be here all week, Monday through Friday, 10 to 12, programming here. Reed, Mouse, and myself off the bench for hour number 1. I'm solo, hour number 2. Going to try to get a Bengals beat writer on my show. We're going to reach out to some people here shortly here after the show. We'll try to do that, have some conversations with them. I believe the plan is going to be we'll do an emergency live show tomorrow later in the afternoon if something happens, whether it be a firing or a trade. I'm sure we will probably do that here at Chatterbox, so be on the lookout for that. Plenty of Bengals conversation to have throughout the remainder of the week here at this point. Hopefully we're talking about a trade. Maybe we're talking about somebody losing their job as well in the process. But the reality of the situation is the season's not over, right? It is over as far as making the playoffs. That's over, but they still have all these games they have to play, right? I mean, this is only, week 10 is the bye. I mean, they still have 11 through 18, right? They still got to roll out there and play lots of football games, and maybe some people stop watching, but this defense still has to go out there and play, 8 games the rest of this way. So, it didn't feel like it could get any worse after the Jets game, and then somehow it did. Could it get even worse than that when you go to Pittsburgh coming off the bye? I don't know. We'll see. But we'll talk about the Bengals still. UC football, didn't get to spend any time on that today. College basketball is back. I mean, UC football they got smacked against Utah. Maybe we'll have Hudson Clocky on later in the week to talk about that. But appreciate everyone, as always, hanging out. Great viewership here on a Monday. Again, we're live every single weekday. We'll do it throughout the whole year there as well, 10 to 12 here at Chatterbox Sports. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate everyone for being here this morning, and be on the lookout for the podcast. That will be up later this afternoon. But until then, take care, everybody.